Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel. This is the Real Nathan Daly, and I'm here with another phenomenal interview. You guys, listen, this was such a great discussion that I had. You guys see the thumbnail. I had the honor and the privilege of interviewing Judge Joe Brown. You guys, we covered a multitude of topics. Great interview. And listen, before I even get into all that, let me just say this. Thank you so much to all of my subscribers. Thank you so much to the members of the channel and those who donate. I really appreciate all that you guys do. Without you, this channel would not be possible. So thank you. And for those who are new to the channel, if you like what you see and you enjoy the topics, please by all means subscribe and join us on this journey as we discuss social issues and problems. We bring facts over feelings and we talk about solutions. It's a place where we don't censor. We have a great time and a great discussion. So you guys, what do we talk about? What do we cover? We covered a lot. You know, I started this interview off by just asking, who is Judge Joe Brown? How did you become the leading #1 judge on daytime television during a time where it was very competitive, right? And so I dive into questions such as, what was it like in the 60s? What was it like going to college? What was it like being some of the first black attorneys during a time that was extremely complex, extremely racist? There was a lot going on in the 60s with the civil rights movement. You guys, Judge Joe Brown gives us some insight. He gives us a behind the scenes look at what was taking place during that time. He talks about the origins of the Black Panther Party. He talks about real activism and what it's like now and what's the difference. He talks about the issues that are plaguing the black community. And he talks about solutions for it. He talks about white supremacy. He talks about racism. He talks about politics. He talks about corruption. You guys, we even covered issues from cases that he worked in the past, you know, some inside information regarding cases such as Emmett Till and what went wrong, who should have been charged, should that woman have really been prosecuted? You guys, we covered all these things. I mean, he's just a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. There were so many things I wanted to ask him, there just wasn't enough time. You guys, but listen, you will really enjoy this conversation. There was a lot that we talked about. We also talked about, if you didn't know, Judge Joe Brown is running for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. You guys, listen, he's putting himself out there. He's exposing the corruption in the city. He's talking about the things that go on below the surface. Not only is he talking about the corruption, he's talking about the solutions. He's talking about the things that he will implement if he becomes mayor. You guys, this is what we're talking about. If you see value in what he's doing, he's going to give us a lot of insight as to what's really going on, and not just within Memphis, but in other cities, and what is needed to fix these problems. If you see value in what he's doing, you guys, get behind it. Get behind the campaign, get behind the movement. He needs your support. You can support through donations, spreading the word and letting other people know, hey, listen, we want Judge Joe Brown in office. We want him as the next mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. You guys, listen, this was a great interview. And I honestly, after rewatching it, I'm like, man, I just felt like a student in the classroom. You guys, I think that you'll find this to be invaluable, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. This was an honor. There was so much shared. There's only so much I could say. But listen, let's dive into it, right? Without further ado, well-renowned man of distinction, Judge Joe Brown. This is the Real Nathan Daly, and it is an honor and it is a pleasure to have you here with us to have a very interesting conversation. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. But before we dive into any of that, please, if you could, introduce yourself and tell people who you are. Those who aren't living under a rock know who you are. Very well-renowned judge. By all means, sir, please give us an introduction of you.
This Judge Joe Brown, and that judge, by the way, is an official title from the state of Tennessee. I didn't get it from the TV show. Anyway, glad to be here. I've been around for a while, and some of you may have had me in your dens, living rooms, bedrooms, bathrooms, all kinds of places for upwards of 15 years while you were growing up, while you're full grown, needed company or something to lapse back to, oh, wow, what am I going to do today? Let's watch with Judge Joe. Anyway, I tried to get it out there as to what people ought to be doing with themselves, since our good preachers don't do that anymore. Told one of them, by the way, not long ago, he said, "Why aren't you back in church?" I said, "Because I haven't heard anybody preach about sin for the last 30 years.
Talk to me.
Now, hey, you can come visit me because that's what I do all the time. This is not right. This is right. This is wrong. This ain't wrong. And this is what you ought to do to change what's wrong to right. And if it's wrong, it's likely to be adversity. And, you know, adversity used to be called Simba. So when you get eaten up by lions, defend the people, don't depend upon the lion to suddenly lose a taste for meat. So
Absolutely.
is what it is.
Absolutely. You know, it's I think it's
Where you want to go today?
man, we're going everywhere. We're going everywhere. So for those who don't know, Judge, you actually are running for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee, and that is the very ambitious. It's very amazing. I'm really excited, and I think you're definitely the man for the job. Can you explain to the people what? First, let's take it back because a lot of people have questions. One of the main questions people want to know about you is what inspired you to become a judge? How long have you been a judge? And then also what inspired you to pursue your career further into becoming a mayor and wanting to pursue that?
I never particularly wanted to be a judge. I didn't want to be a lawyer. That was a series of historical accidents that got me off into the law field. But here I am. So
Right.
I'm here, and people ask me to run for judge, and that's been, oh, wow, almost 35 years ago. So I've been a judge about that long, and before that, I had an interesting career. I was a defense lawyer. I was the chief public defender for the city of Memphis. I was the first black prosecutor for the city. I did EEOC,
Wow.
legal services, all kinds of stuff. Did a lot of capital defense work. One time got the youngest person in the world on death row, off death row, and got a stay of execution on him about 23 minutes before they were going to do him in. So
Mm,
I've had a lot of serious felonies. I think I had 42 first-degree murder cases where the state demanded the death penalty. Some of them were private cases, and some of them it was through something I did. I volunteered to train the public defender's capital defense team. That's after I had been public defender, and another partner became public defender. He died. Oh, wow, that was a real deep one. Interstate drug thing, and
right.
42 defendants, and the only two that weren't dead at the end were my two, and the only lawyer wasn't dead is me, and my law partner was dead. So
Yikes.
I got another one who was married to one of the female law partners, and he became the public defender and also represented habitual criminals and major violators. Did that as a volunteer thing too.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of pro bono work, but it was interesting. And then I got elected as a judge almost 35 years ago on the state bench, got elected to 2 8-year terms. And then I did that 15-year thing as a contract arbitrator recognized by the California Supreme Court. So even that was official.
Hmm. So that's interesting, Judge. So then how did you started TV, became a household name, even to myself. I think I had to have been about 12, maybe 12, 13 years old when you came out. Judge Joe Brown, the most exciting, exhilarating show on television. I loved it. One could argue that, you know, seeing that show and other shows like it, like Cops, probably helped inspired my interest into law enforcement. And I've heard plenty of people say they were inspired by your show to go into law and go into practice. How did you get that? Like, how did that come about? Because that was back in like 97 and you had 10 seasons. You had a strong run.
15. 15.
15
1,
seasons.
2, 3. Yeah. And when the last 4 years I was beating everybody but Judy, and we tied every now and then.
Okay.
So the top 3 syndicated shows were me, Judy, and Wheel of Fortune. We were all 3 beating Oprah every day or every week in the ratings, but they don't tell you that because they didn't want straight black man to be up there. And let's see how that happened. When I got this person off death row, he was the youngest in the world on death row. He was 15 years, 2 weeks old when they were supposed to execute him. And everybody got excited about that. That's before I got to be a judge. So they wanted to buy the movie rights, and I sold them to them, and I wound up donating most of the money to his defense fund. Then after that, when I got to be judge, I came up with some novel sentencing ideas that seemed to work, and it dropped the statewide recidivism rate from 80% down to just 18 in my courtroom over this 10-year period they were doing this study. They got interested in that. I had even shows from Australia and New Zealand came in to cover the sentencing. Ed Bradley Street Stories did features, 60 Minutes, that kind of thing, you name it. And then we did nightly news, and I also was the last judge on James Earl Ray's case, and it would have been my conclusion that Ray was not the gunman and did not kill King. The weapon that was used to kill King was supplied by the FBI to a 2-man hit team. They recruited, it seems, from the Quantico Marine Base, where they had a sniper school and also an FBI training academy. And the shot was fired from the fire station, not the flop house, not the bushes. It was a 2-man team.
Wow.
We have the invoice, late December 1967, when the ammunition and the 5 rifles were obtained by the FBI from the Defense Department. We also have the inventory that they had to conduct in late April 1968, the same month that King got assassinated. The FBI claimed they could only find 4 because they lost 1.
Right.
So it was a very unique weapon in terms of its ballistic characteristics, and the bullet they pull out of King matched that precisely. And for a civilian to have fired the shot, he would have had to have either had the weapon supplied to him by the FBI or had access to a very good custom gunsmith who could make barrels, which Ray did not have.
Right.
So that's another story. Anyway, they got a hold of me, and this Australian guy comes to me and says, "Mike, with you all, it was our show." So in 1998, I got invited in to do this promo thing, which they did. Not 98, 97. And they did it, and they showed it in 1998 down in NAPTE, which is National Association of Television and Motion Picture Producers. And the show got sold, and it went on the air the first time in September 98. One other thing, by the way, there was a lot of inference about, was I somebody that had some event working for something, did something wrong to a certain young lady that had a part in Moesha. It wasn't me. It was Mayor Koch of New York, who had gotten the newly resurrected show, The People's Court, at the same time that Moesha was launching, and they were there at the same time. I've even talked to people who interviewed him, and he talked about it. So it wasn't me. I didn't know who the devil was being talked about, but it was Koch, who, by the way, appointed Judge Judy to her domestic court position right after law school in New York, and also appointed her husband, Scheinlin, who took over People's Court after Koch.
Interesting.
So he had a heart attack. So while they were doing whatever they were doing back in January 1996, I was presiding over the James Earl Ray matter and some murder cases that I didn't come along to 2 years later. And it was described as a new show. And trust me, when you're going into year 3 in Hollywood, it ain't a new show.
Right.
Since 98% of them don't last 1 year.
Judge, I did not know that you presided over that case. That's actually very interesting. And it also leads me to questions in reference to what was your experience like being a judge in the 60s around the civil
Well,
rights,
I
you know?
wasn't. Well, let's put it this way. In the 60s, I was at UCLA. So I was in the class of 1969. That's the same
Okay.
one that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a.k.a. Big Lou, was in, Mike
Right.
Warren, and all the rest of them. Well, maybe here in front of that. But yeah, we had an interesting thing. That's when it got real exciting on campus. I recruited John Hudgens and Bunchy Carter, Nathaniel Clark,
Mm.
Elaine Brown, Geronimo Pratt, aka G, and some other people who were in the Black Panther Party. I was the Black Student Union liaison to the community and member of the Black Student Alliance. So we
Mm.
all worked together. And I was there in the building, et cetera, when Hudgens and Carter got gunned down by 4 members of the US organization under Ron Karenga. That's the person that started Kwanzaa, which
Wow.
I won't deal with because
Right.
when they started it in Leimert Park in Los Angeles, the express purpose was to get people to talk about what they were doing with the movement. This started in 1966, and I went, but myself and everybody else, we started getting hauled in by the FBI, and they would quote what we were saying. Why did you say so and so? First Amendment.
Right.
Nothing further. I take the fifth.
Take the fifth.
Okay, first and fifth.
Yes, sir.
MF, blah, blah. Did you discuss? Yes, I did. First
First
Amendment.
Amendment.
Take the fifth on the rest. And they had people, brother, why are you taking shorthand notes? The Mindliner wants to know what's going on in the community. We think you are snitching. And they quote you exactly. So we haven't had much to do with that. There's a lot of animosity, but Minister Farrakhan asked everybody to give forgiveness at that first Million Man March. It's interesting when it was going on because I was in a federal maximum security penitentiary lecturing some of the inmates, and we were all sitting there watching this on the big screen televisions, and we were discussing events. So it is what it is.
God, dog. That's why people say you're just a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, being able to, you're so closely related to so much that was going on as this nation started to transition. And I remember, we met, for those who don't know, we met at the Black Agenda, which was a very great event put on by Michi X. And without that, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to meet you. And when you started mentioning the Black Panthers and things like that, I said, man, I really don't know enough about Judge Joe Brown. It was so limited to just the television show, but you've been around and you have such experience dealing with a lot of things going on.
It was a lot going on in the 60s, and I was on the West Coast where it was all centered.
Right.
It moved from the South from this civil rights stuff, which we couldn't buy into because we weren't going to get out on our knees and let some fool beat us across the head until some other fool felt guilty about it. It's like, raise your hand, you might not bring it back.
Right.
So that was the center of the activism and militancy that spread back to the rest of the country.
Right.
It just so happens that myself and others, I wasn't the only one who were located in a situation at the right time, right place to run into each other. So we all knew each other. And if you were into the student scene, that's where it was at back in the 60s. It wasn't being pimps, hoes, drug dealers, and all this other stuff. It was going to college. And there was other good reason, too. If you weren't, you got one of those 1A classifications, and there was a nice full expense paid trip to nice sunny Nam where you could get closely and intimately acquainted with the creepy crawling things slithering through the mud and slime.
Right.
And get a lot of excitement with incoming and so forth. Now, that being the case, things happen.
Right.
So it developed that a lot of stuff went on. Like we thought it was routine. We're sitting around Panther parties. We didn't want to have much to do with the US organization, the Black Student Alliance, the community stuff. We're all having meetings and we're hashing stuff out. And, you know, sometimes these discussions got heated. And
Right.
we weren't into feelings then. It was like, hey, is it working? And we read Mao and a lot of the things that came out of that. We tried to be effective, and it was about being logical, rational, and reasonable.
Yep.
Now everybody talks about love and feelings, and we just said,
Correct.
damn that, you know, you can do that later. We got things to do.
Work to do. Correct.
Yeah, there are some things that happened that people get totally wrong now because they brag about them and they hold them up. And at the time, we were going, what kind of damn fool move is that?
Exactly.
Now, see if you can get what I'm talking about. One of them, they glorify something, but before it got done, there were weeks of the animosity, with a lot of animus in the discussions. Like, look, man, we are patrolling our communities. We're carrying 12 gauge, 18-inch barrel shotguns, riot guns, and carbines and stuff. And it's legal. And when we see the cops acting crazy, we pull up and four of us get out the car. They chill out, get back to being police rather than trying to be Gestapo and SS. Right. It was just an ordinary ticket. Nobody paid any attention to it. But then these people did what they did. And just like we said, within a week, carrying a loaded long arm in public, 2 weeks, was illegal. Ronnie Reagan signed it into action, and a whole lot of people died because that gave LAPD the opportunity, the San Diego police and the Oakland police, the opportunity to pull us over, not us, but black folk who were trying to protect the neighborhood, and there were a lot of shootouts. So that was what we called adventurism. And we asked, why the hell are you doing it? They wanted to raise money. But anyway, it is what it is. So it happened, but now it's glorified. We thought it was a disgrace at the time. And it's like, man, what the hell's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? You're defeating the purposes. We don't give a damn about you trying to get glam and glitz and PR and money off of this. The people need safety. But didn't happen that way. And now these folk are big heroes because they did it. And the question that you might want to ask yourself is, what did they accomplish? But you see, those kind of lessons don't match the narrative these days because people are unfamiliar with what's happened over the last half century. So they don't want to hear anybody discuss it. And I'm not talking about don't do something. It's just make sure that what you do is effective. Correct. It ain't got nothing to do with being sellout, coon, and like some of these folk talking about coon, they get slapped across the head, turn around and run, and most of them don't have the balls to stand there and do what they want to do.